Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors and filmmakers can talk about how they write their books or films, how they publish them, and how they market them. You can find us on YouTube. Just look for my name, Linda Maria Frank. Click on my picture and all of the videos will come up. We have interviewed about 125 authors, probably a little bit more by now. They're all local authors, so if you want to find out about writing and publishing and marketing, or you're just looking for some good books to read by local authors, please look at our YouTube channel. We're also on Facebook. The name of the Facebook page is The Writer's Dream. If you wish to ask me a question or be on the show, you can contact me through my email, which is my initials, lmf217@hotmail.com. Today's guest is John Carpenter. He's a filmmaker and creator of an award-winning popular classic film program. Welcome, John.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here, Linda. Thank you so much for having me.
How did you become interested in film?
Oh, well, that goes way back.
Of course.
And I was 9 years old. I was kind of cocky for a child. I would watch these old movies. I hate to use the term old, because I feel that an old classic, that's the phrase now. But I believe a film is only old after you've seen it 3 or 4 or 5 times. Then it's old. But each time when you see a film, a classic film, as you said, it is brand new. And it doesn't matter the year it was made or released. So I said to my father that I would have done that sequence differently. I would have cut it differently. I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently. Rather cocky, you know, and which is something that I've kept.
Yeah, but it's unusual for a 9-year-old child to be so analytical.
Yeah. But so my father said, well, you know, John, you could show films. This is before DVD or VHS. You could show films in the house yourself. You could have your own films. Nirvana, the gates of Nirvana opened. And yeah, I started collecting films at that young age. Really had a liking and love for silent films. And I got to know of one comedian in particular, a comedian by the name of Charlie Chase, who began films in the teens, but really became a name comedian in the 20s, working for Hal Roach Studios, which also had the Laurel and Hardy, the Our Gang series, etc. He was the bravest comic of them all, I always felt. Why? Because he didn't rely on a funny costume or an outrageous characterization or makeup. He was a regular, handsome man of his period, of his time, the Jazz Age. And I could relate to a regular man getting into situations, then comic situations, but then through the strength of his own mind, he would get himself out of those situations. And I really felt that was something inspiring, which no other comedian was relying on. He wasn't relying on slapstick. He was relying on his own personality, getting into situations that I would possibly get into myself.
All right, so 9 years old. Let's fast forward to a period in your life where you actually became a film historian and made a collection and created this program. Describe the program.
Well, the program is this. My view is that a film historian, of course, studies film, but also studies history. And to combine, because I believe film is our H.G. Wells time machine. And to really view what was going on in the past, perhaps to not allow that to happen in our future now, is to study those aspects, you know? And a lot of people deem that as being politically incorrect. Well, life is politically incorrect, I would believe, you know? And the thing is, you learn from the wrongs of the past. And I show those films because making the unavailable available is what I believe people today have to see. And I was right in that assumption because my shows are packed, thank God.
Yeah,
and I want to branch this out. I want to go further with this because the people have a hunger to see the past and learn from the past. Yes, be entertained from the past. That is a definite, because people actually mark my shows on their calendar. people who never even go out anymore, such as the seniors in the communities. They now have something to go to because what they do is they go, now, okay, you say they're just remembering their past. That isn't it. They're meeting new people who have similar interests, similar mindsets. I call them my film fans because what they are fans of film. And at these shows I give and these lectures, they get a whole new family. They look forward to seeing the same people each and every time they come.
Okay, so give me an idea of
Yeah.
what a typical lecture would be like. How many films do you show? How many films do you talk about? Do you have a theme?
Well, usually I have a theme, and I go with this. It's a similar theme, which is like in a neighborhood movie house kind of a presentation. That's something no one else does either, and I've been deemed insane.
Do you give out dishes? Showing my age.
I'm showing the fact that I'm not as financially stable as that. I don't. What I do is at a neighborhood movie house experience, I find through my huge film collection, I keep on amassing more and more and more for this purpose. I show similarly themed shorts, such as cartoons or comedies, one reel, two reel comedies, similarly themed as the feature I'm showing. This way it is a smooth mindset through line of the afternoon. For instance, I couldn't show, let's say, a golfing short comedy or cartoon with a Boris Karloff horror film. One of my films showings just recently, I called them my movie matinees. I've got a name for everything.
Good.
And I showed The Black Room with Boris Karloff, a film that normally isn't shown because it isn't one of his universal horror films. It is more of a period piece. It takes place in the Elizabethan period, the Tower of London, et cetera, et cetera. Now, through the fact that I am a film historian, and I know all these things, I've learned all of these things about film, I knew there was Mo Howard from the Three Stooges, of all people, would always say every time Columbia would be shooting a film and still had that set standing, we would then make a short comedy on that same set. So, bing! My idea was to locate that short, Restless Nights, where they shot on the same sets as The Black Room, and team that Elizabethan two-reel comedy with the Stooges with the Elizabethan feature of Boris Karloff.
Do you talk about, when you show these films, do you talk about how society, culture at the time reflects itself in the films?
Very much. And that's why these films were not insulting to the people of the period. Because you got to remember, no one knew these films would even exist today. But of course they do, and there is an interest, there is a hunger for these films. I show that politically, especially dealing with the political aspects of things, you know, because I want to show what was wrong, and as opposed to what's now, and et cetera, and expound on that.
I think the evolution of films made about war
Yeah.
is very interesting. How the perspective of the filmmaker and the director and the producer and whatnot is reflected in the World War I films were very romanticized, and then World War II were very romanticized too, but also propaganda.
Very much tremendous propaganda.
And then we got to Vietnam and politicized, and now it's American Sniper, for instance. You get to go into the head of the American Sniper and how awful it must have been to be that person.
And
so,
if you don't mind me interrupting,
no, go ahead.
That's another aspect, because the audience wants to actually live and see the reality of a film and of a time, be it now or be it then. That is what really grips the audience to their seats and their focus to the screen, is to understand and see what was actually going on. With Veterans Day approaching, I have those programs. There's one program that I mentioned earlier to you, The Three Stooges versus the Third Reich. Now, I never in a billion years thought that I was going to be the person to speak positively of the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Laurel and Hardy, all those people, yes, definitely. But the Three Stooges, I never thought. But this is rarely known. I came across an article titled "Why Hitler Hated the Three Stooges." I had to read the article.
It was like a self-portrait.
There you are. But what got me interested was that it pointed out that Hitler did see, because before World War II, now Hitler's being, the Three Stooges being Jews and working at a low-budget Poverty Row studio, of which Columbia Pictures was at the time. They weren't really hampered to do the right thing, so to speak, as all the big studios were doing. So they made it very clear in their films to parody Hitler. Mo was Hitler, Curly was Mussolini, Larry was Tojo, but to make all the comments, such as references to the concentration camps, the things that FDR wasn't making so clear at the time, to make us repeat the World War I, as you mentioned, that was the war to end all wars.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't want the American people to think that we were going to go into World War II, the Second World War that we would have, due to looking out for the Jews and the atrocities in the concentration camps. So no other studio was saying these things. I came across a film from a lower, or even lower budget studio, a Mascot, and they were talking about concentration camps, but they were not mentioning that Jews were in the concentration camps. They were making it Catholics, and yes, there were Christians in the concentration camps. Yes, we know that. But I'm saying...
Only as tokens, though.
There you are. But what I'm saying is that they were making a very strong comment that Jews were not involved. It was work camps.
Yeah, well, that was the propaganda angle.
There you
How
are.
did you say you have 400,000
Yes, ma'am.
films? First of all, my question would be, because I had a husband who collected things, where do you put them?
Well, let's put it this way. The basement of my house is my film archive.
Okay, so
I
are
like to
these...
call it my film archive. My family would call it something else.
Yes, but these are the old-fashioned
On
films,
reels.
on reels.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
So are you digitizing them?
Yes, I am. And when I do my film shows, I digitize them and I put them on DVD. And because most libraries and most venues, temples, things like that, public venues, aren't equipped with motion picture projectors any longer.
No.
So, sorry.
Do you have one?
Oh, do I have one? I have like 4. I always have a backup. But
You don't collect IMAX films, though. They come in those
No.
enormous
No.
reels.
I'd throw myself out of the house.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
No,
interesting.
but the thing is that they don't make film anymore.
No.
So that alone, I mean, if you're a purist, as I like to think that I am, hearing the purr of a projector and seeing the film illuminated on the screen with knowing that, film to me is humanity. It's a human-made art. And because of it being a human-made art, you need to touch and feel, like even when, as a filmmaker, I don't digitalize when I edit. I work actually with the film. Because it's a man-made
Well, it's real
thing.
to you.
Yeah,
But
right.
I think film, especially American-made films, are the most powerful form of communication. Because you go, people will say to me, well, you missed, I want to see a certain film, and I'll miss it in the movies. And they'll say, well, you can see it on Netflix. I don't want to see it in my living room. I want to go into that theater where it's dark and nobody talks, and I lose myself in that film. And it's so many films. As a teacher, I often want to write a letter to Steven Spielberg and thank him for telling good stories. That are timeless. His stories are timeless, from E.T. to his Schindler's List to almost all the films that he's ever made. And but these things live on, and if you're a film historian, you're helping them to live on because
that's
people.
the main purpose.
And Almost every high school and colleges, of course, but even high schools have a film course
Yeah.
where they teach the art of the film.
Yeah, but when I was in
Well,
college...
it's not as extensive as what you do, but still
No,
in all, it
no,
opens
but
their
it's
mind
really-
to the fact that this is not just something you go on date night for.
Exactly. Films are more than that, and you learn that because of, like, in what I do, a lot of times the grandparents will drag their grandkids, and I do mean drag. But I always make myself accessible afterwards for them to come up and contact me and speak with me and, you know, have that human connection, you know? As, in essence, I am the film, I am the movie man, as they call me.
Well, the animated films themselves are a whole genre
Yeah.
of communication of various kinds. I mean, I love Walt Disney. I mean, how could you not?
Well, I like Disney very much. He is very great. He's great. He's art.
I don't know about him being great, but I love
Well,
what
not
he
him. Well,
produced.
he is the company.
Yeah.
But my favorite is Max Fleischer.
Well, I don't even know who he is.
Betty Boop, Popeye.
Oh,
Yeah.
not my thing.
Well, it's a different style.
Yeah.
It's a very New York gritty style of animation because they were located in New York.
Yeah, well,
Any.
most movie making was in New York before
Correct.
it moved out to California. I mean, they still have that studio in Astoria.
Well, I worked at the Astoria
Yeah,
Studios.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a museum now, isn't it? Well, they still make
Museum of the
films,
Moving
don't they?
Image, yeah.
Yeah.
I worked there when they were shooting the Cotton Club, and it was a great experience, and it was great to see an actual film used on the same sets, because the Marx Brothers, they shot their first film and first talkie, The Coconuts,
Yeah,
on
they're
the
funny.
same sound set stages that I was on, and that's a great experience. But as you were saying, Linda, which was a very good point, in fact, I've been awarded by this from the New York Veteran Police Association.
I was just going to bring that up because I know you want to talk about, you know, this tremendous project you've done. You have received awards, so
Yes,
you
I
need to talk about that.
Thanks, and it's my honor to do so.
And your joy,
For
no
you-
doubt.
Yes, it is. But for you, Linda, anything. And I say that on camera, which means I'm telling the truth. So, but what I found is that showing these films, it unites the communities. You come in as strangers, and as you were saying, you prefer seeing a film in the theater, you know, with other people. But that's what I want to expound upon, because it's very true. And you come in as strangers, but here you are, in spite of your age, your race, your religion, your sexual proclivities, whatever you want to call it. This bonds you with another human being, because the one thing we're all sharing, no matter what our differences are, what we are sharing is the fact that we have the same emotions. A scary film will scare us. A musical film will make us tap our toes or whatever. You know, a comedy film will make us all laugh at the same things. We are one. We are one people. It is a bond of humanity. We are the same species, no matter what our differences are.
Yes, I've seen films, I can't think of one offhand, but it's very sad, and you hear everybody sniffling,
Yep.
sniffling at the
That's
same
it.
time. But yeah, well, it's our culture too.
Yes.
American films are the American culture.
Well, the rest of the world views us via our films.
Oh, sure.
Always have been. Always have.
And they're very popular overseas. Every time I've taken a trip
Tremendously.
overseas, American films are featured everywhere.
Yep. Well, that's where we make our most money from. Because people have to remember, film is not just entertainment. Ha ha ha.
Oh, it's
Film
an industry.
Is it's a business.
It's an
right?
industry.
You know, and you're not going to do something that is not going to be beneficial for the studio that is investing all of these millions into a project.
Well, I write books, and I belong to an organization, and I had to give a talk on converting your book to movie. Now, I've never even tried to do this, but it's very easy to get information off the internet
Sure.
of people who do it, and they'll give you tips and whatnot, and basically it comes down to luck and who you know.
Basically, who you know.
But also, they will tell you right off the bat that the first time you do this, until you get a name, make sure that the story you're trying to sell is not going to be a big budget film. You don't want that sinking of the Titanic, although you can do that with CGI, now computer generated images. But make sure that the film is a story that is not going to cost a lot of money, because, I mean, we all know about production companies and going to the Union of South Africa rather than Scotland because it's cheaper. I worked in Central Park for a while, and it was hysterical because they were always filming Law and Order. There was always something happening there. So it's interesting when you really think about how many different aspects of small businesses and big businesses that depend on filmmaking.
Yes, that's very true.
So it's an industry. But tell us about the awards. We got
I
off
will
the.
tell you this though. First, since you're speaking about filmmaking, I'm going to tell you something against what you just said.
No.
Yes, I dare. But only because I know what I'm talking about, and that is the fact that I made. Now, you think to make a period piece of film set in the 1920s to authentically look exactly like a silent comedy, cars, clothes, sets, the works, I did so. In 1987, prior to the film The Artists coming out and winning all the Academy Awards as it did, as being a freak silent film, I made an exact genre recreation of what a silent comedy was like, with all the knowledge I had, and having made films since I was in junior high school. I knew how to make films. I knew how to make that style, recreate that style.
And the name of that film is?
Late to Lunch. Thank you for the plug. The film is called Late to Lunch. It was released theatrically in 2002. In 2009, it began being sold by Alpha Video internationally. That website is, second plug, www.oldies.com on the DVD. And hey, it's right here as a matter of fact.
Hold it up this way, because otherwise you get
I don't want to
reflection.
get a shine.
There you go.